What do we do when we get to round 13? Do we sell Murray? Do we sell Haas? Both? Do we hold? What's the plan? Middles are going to be one of the tougher positions to cover throughout the origin period. They're the only position other than wing fullback to have 3 players that you need playing in each of the origin weeks, around 13, 16, and 19, compared to just one for the hooker video last week. So you can't really run with just one gun that you base everything off around, because you're going to have multiple guys like Haas, Madison, Tohu Harris, Tarpanay. They're all going to be in the mix and interact differently to get you those 3 players in each of those rounds. So let's go through the origin stars to begin with. Which ones are we going to look to hold? Which ones are we going to look to sell? That's going to inform a little bit of our strategy and how much money we're going to have moving forward to move to guys potentially like Madison if he doesn't play Origin, or Tarpanay or Tohu Harris if you don't have them at that stage. So first up we have Isaiah Yeo. If we go back and look at the Panthers schedule, they have a bye in round 13, round 19. They have a 4-day, 3-day, and 4-day turnaround, which is actually the equal best in the comp, along with the Roosters and Titans, 4 Origin players backing up. So we can see 4 days, probably going to play just about a full game in those, and maybe a few reduced minutes. But mostly, he's just going to miss that one extra week that they aren't on a bye. So 1 extra game missed and just 1 reduced minutes, that's annoying, but that happens with suspension sometimes, and somebody will sometimes get a HIA. That's definitely holdable over the long period through that Origin mid-season. So Isaiah Yeo is definitely a hold. I don't think many of us probably have him, as he started very expensive, but he's a top-tier gun you will look to bring in by the end of the year. He just looks to be that cut above most of the others, along with probably Haas and maybe Murray. So let's move on to Haas now. He's not quite as good as Yeo in that he has 2 3-day turnarounds. We can see round 14 and round 20 backing up. He's got a 3-day turnaround, maybe reduced minutes, or if we're a little unlucky, he might get a rest. The only one that he misses that isn't a bye that he's going to miss anyway is that round 13. So to be honest, Haas is probably one of the better ones to hold. He's not ideal because 2 reduced minutes games, you might only get a 45 in 40 minutes, for example, if he's backing up and tired from a Golden Point Origin win, for example. Who knows what's going to happen? So those are the 2 who I would definitely consider at least holding through the Origin period, just because they're top tier guns and they have a decent enough schedule that you can probably cop a week or a low score here or there and still hang on to them without wasting a trade. Guys like Tino from the Titans, he's got an equally good schedule as Yeo and actually better than Haas, but he's not an elite gun. He's not a 60 plus average guy. It's much easier to buy just somebody else who plays round 13 or round 16 who averages 50 or 55 already. So guys like Tino and Carrigan, I would have them as pretty definite sells come round 13. Other guys that are sells because their schedule isn't great are the 3 big ones: Cotter, Murray, and if Madison does play Origin, him as well. Cotter is going to miss the 3 Origin weeks, but the thing is, he actually is going to miss 2 extras. He misses those ones because the Cowboys are not on a bye in round 13 and round 16. That's why guys like Reece Robson are so good, or non-Origin guys from the Cavs, because they play those first 2 weeks. But on the flip side, Cotter, not great to hold. He's got a round 15 bye as well, which just means he's going to miss 4 out of those 8 games and potentially have a reduced minutes in there as well. That's an easy sell. Similar to Murray, it's even actually slightly worse because he has a bye in one of the minor bye rounds, which are really tough to get your full 17 for. He's definitely a sell. Madison, if he doesn't play Origin, is going to be pretty much the single best mid to have during the Origin period. He plays all 3 of 13, 16, and 19. But on the flip side, if he does end up in the Blues 17 somewhere, he misses 2 other weeks other than that. So he misses 5 out of the 8, and one of the 3 remaining is probably a reduced minutes game. You can't have him in your team for that. That's just suicide for your rank. All right. So those are the guys you probably want. I would say Haas or probably none at this stage. Yo, if you've gone pod, definitely hang on to him. He's going to be solid for you. Now, we're going to look at the non-origin options now, because there's a bunch of mid-ranges and non-origin guns that are pretty close to elite or like 50-55 average. They'll be extremely valuable through the origin period, particularly if you can get them at a bit of a discount to start. Now, the golden rule with these guys, don't pick like 4 or 5 from one category. So don't pick like 4 or 5 guys who play both round 13 and round 16, because come round 19, you're either going to have to sell most of them or you're going to lose a lot of points because you're not going to have many mids in round 19. So things like that. Make sure you have a balance to make sure that you can cover 3 players in each of those origin weeks, and ideally as many as you can in the other rounds throughout those 8-game period. So these 3 are some of the better ones. Round 13 and round 16, they are very, very valuable to have before Origin or the start of Origin before you maybe sell off at the end for an elite gun. They include Adam Elliott. I'll talk about him in a little bit and why he's going to be good around this time. Adam Elliott is certainly one of them. Plays round 13, round 16, has that round 14 bye like the Eels. Now, Jermaine Hopgood, he's might not be a good buy right now. But if you think about it, if Ryan Madison plays Origin, Junior Paulo's probably also playing Origin, and Regan Campbell-Gillard is out for probably quite a while with that hip injury or that groin injury, I think it is. It looks like a high grade. I wouldn't be surprised if he's out probably a month at least, and not even on big minutes if he's back, but there's a good chance that Hopgood is going to be the sole huge minutes middle in that, and we might see the return of Hopgoat, the 80 minutes superstar, throughout this period. Not outside of it. I don't think he's going to be a keeper outside of it if Madison keeps playing in the middle and Bryce Cartwright starts on an edge. But through this period, Hopgood could be your key to success, to be honest. I think he might even get down to something like 600k, and then round 13, you're going to have big minutes. Round 14 is the bye. Round 15 is going to be back to whatever it was. Round 16 is going to be those massive minutes. Round 17 backing up, probably as big minutes. Round 18 bye, and that's important because it means that full game where he's not going to be getting great minutes is missed. So his cash rises don't have any bumps, and it just keeps going up and up. So you've got 16, 17, 19, and 20, 4 games in a row where the Origin stars are either going to be a little bit tired, maybe not quite backing up, and it just spells Hopgood really big minutes over the Origin period. So if you've held him, it's hard to know what to do. I would still probably get rid of him and buy him back, but if you're going to hold through, he's definitely going to do better for you now in the Origin period when so many of those Eel stars are away. Ryan Madison, if he doesn't play Origin, Hopgood's probably not going to be much of an option, and instead you would get on Maddo because he does play 13, 16, and 19. Eels are the only team in the comp to play all 3 Origin weeks and not have a bye. And so Madison will be incredibly valuable if he is named in Clubland in round 13 and not in the Origin squad. So moving on to other guys who also play round 13 that we should be targeting sooner rather than later, include guys like Tarpanay, Tohu Harris. They're the elite guys, and then you've sort of got the bit more, maybe 50 sort of average guys like DeBell and Corey Horsburgh, and then a couple of mid-ranges in Totola and Jackson Ford. Jackson Ford's probably going to be peaked by then, but his cover is going to be incredibly valuable over round 13 and round 14, so I'd probably hold him until then. Maybe he's around 15 sell, maybe he's around 16 sell, I don't know, but I think he's probably a good one to hold unless he really drops off in the next couple of weeks or so. Now, the ones that we need to look at, either only a couple of now or you just buy a bunch later, are guys like the Bulldogs and the Sharks who play round 16 and round 19. So you've got your TPJs, your McInnes, and potentially your Max King. I can't remember exactly when Luke Thompson's supposed to come back. I think it is sometime around this round 16, but it'll probably be eased back anyway. So Pangai Jr. especially, I would say, if he's cheap, because he's going to be up and down, if you can pick him up on a down part for a little bit cheaper, there's every chance that he'll smash you out a 50 or a 60 or an 80 in a couple of these weeks throughout the Origin period and be a real match winner and just boost that overall rank up a lot higher. Cam McInnes, I'm very whelmed by Cam McInnes. Not underwhelmed, not overwhelmed. He's just there. He's basically a 50 average option at the moment, and he's not moving in price. You can wait until Dale Finucane is back, and you can see whether he's going to stay locked and Finucane moves into the prop rotation or what. I wouldn't buy McInnes right now. I'd wait probably another 2 weeks, maybe jump on in round 10 if he's keeping that lock spot with Rudolph out. But for now, there aren't a heap of round 16 and round 19 options. So these are some of the best ones at the moment. Other options to cover this tough round 16, because if you look at it, you might have these guys, or like maybe one or two of them, but look at all of these early season guys, early Origin guys who you're going to have or going to want that are just not going to be there around 16. You're probably going to have at least 3, I'd say, of DeBellin, Tarpanay, Harris, Ford, Totola, and you're probably going to have to sell a few, or you're going to have to hold a few, and you're going to need guys in round 16. Round 16 is the most important round for mids, because you can see round 13 and round 19, all of these 6 guys can cover that. I don't think you'll be wanting Ford and Totola by that stage. You'll probably have sold them, but at least some of these other guys. So you do start to look for other options, and probably my favorite poor cover option is Cheese. He's got the hooker mid dual, so you can also play him in the hooker position, but there's going to be plenty of others in round 16. You're going to have Reese Robson, I think. You're going to have Sonny Luke or Mitch Kenny, and there's just going to be a little bit more flexibility with that hooker position than it's going to be with the mid position. So I really like Cheese as your round 16 mid, even though he misses 2 Origin weeks, and that kind of classifies him as a poor Origin cover option. Another guy who I'm kind of upset I didn't jump on this week, to be honest, because as you can see, I've looked at the trend and haven't finished it off because I was waiting to see what his final score was. Fodawaker, buy in round 13 and round 16. Absolutely dreadful Origin cover. He's not going to do you anything unless you have him until round 19. But he's averaging about 60 minutes or even a little bit more since Jamin Jollife's tore his pec. And he's going to be in that spot until Jollife comes back, I think about round 16, round 17 as well. So Fodawaker, not good cover, but potentially a good money maker. And if you look at it as a guy who you definitely sell in round 16, well, he's just a cow who misses the one game, and he's potentially a high-scoring middle for you in the first couple weeks at least, and heading into Origin. Unfortunately now, I think he's going to make quite a lot this week, because last 4 scores of 62, 49, 54, and I think he just scored 68. He's going to be about 660, 670. That's really pushing it for a guy who doesn't have much cover. If you're a head-to-head player, most of this sort of stuff doesn't apply. You just buy the Origin guns because they're not playing anyway. It doesn't matter. You have the week off. But Fodawaker actually looks a fantastic head-to-head option at the moment. He's pumping out fantastic scores. It's still a little bit of a discount, but for overall, probably not enough to get us interested at the moment, given the poor cover. Okay, so these are probably the main options we've got. You might have guys like Tafoa Sipley. I think there might be some issue with Kelma Tuilagi and Ethan Bullimore. Injury's going to bring his minutes back down, but potentially if he keeps playing big minutes, he's going to be an interesting option. He just scored a 60. And maybe Tom Flegler, if he bottoms out with Haas away in Origin and Carrigan, he could get really good minutes and be like a Totola in your team. But yeah, there's a couple of guys like that. And we can't predict, especially the cheaper guys, because they're just going to emerge through injury. And we're not going to try and rely on those because they're going to be unpredictable anyway. We want to look at the keeper, well, the gun options, the sort of the non-Origin keeper, and then like the mid-ranges to get us to that 3 players each week. So we've got the Yo and the Haas as the Origin options you can potentially hold. Madison is going to depend. If he's Origin, do not have him. He's going to miss at least 5 games. It's going to be rough as. And then the 2 non-Origin guns in Tohu Harris and Joe Tarpanay. These 2 guys probably average somewhere around 55. I am a little worried about Tarpanay, but he in general, he sort of revs up mid-year, so I'm still holding strong. You're probably going to want a couple of these guys. You're probably going to want 2 or 3. And if you are selling your Origin guys, maybe you have all 3 of these. I don't know. It depends how much salary cap you have, but these are the expensive guys you're going to want. You're going to want at least 2, I'd say. You're going to probably want another couple from the low-end keepers, and then not as many, but a couple mid-ranges and cheapies to fill it out. So if we look at the low-end keepers, we've got Horsburgh, DeBellin, Hopgood, Elliott, Pango Jr., King, McInnes, Fodawaker. There's going to be others that are going to pop up in the next few weeks with injury. We'll see what happens with them and such like. But I've organised it into the round 13, round 16 bye, and that sort of thing is you can sort of just get a rough idea. And then the mid-ranges. Most of these are going to be round 16 cells, apart from probably Cheese, that are going to get you through that early Origin period before you go for a gun in round 16, or like even in another position, you might even decide to get round 16 is going to be a little tough with wing fullbacks, so you might even go somebody like Joey Marnie if you didn't have him already, or Pappenhausen if he's back by then. Like it's just going to depend, but like round 16 mids are going to be tough. Probably going to want 2 or 3 of these guys, and maybe 1 or 2 of here. Because there's 3 middles compared to 1 hooker. We were saying you probably need at least 3 hookers depending on the rotation throughout that Origin period. You're going to need at least probably 6 mids. You're going to need a lot of cover. A lot of them are going to be on buys. And when there's suspensions or injuries, you're just going to need more backup in general. So keeping this in mind, let's have a go at doing this. I'm not going to do it for my team right now. That's going to change throughout the year. I might go through it a little bit at the end, but let's go through an example. So say that you want to hold Haas. He's the best option in the game in the mid so far. He's just absolutely revving it up. He's got a decent Origin schedule too. Only misses the Origin rounds and maybe reduced minutes. It'd be if he's rested, it's a little unlucky, but he's got one of the better Origin schedules. So if you're gonna have a couple of expensive guns like Haas and maybe Tohu Harris, you're probably not going to want a third because Haas is a lot more expensive than Madison. So Haas and another gun probably means you can't buy a third gun, and you want to look for more guys like DeBellin, McInnes, TPJ if you're planning on holding Haas. Plans might change, but if you're planning on holding Haas through that period because he's such a good scorer, do start to look at those mid-range or like high-level cash cow sort of low-end keeper options. So I've shown that with DeBellin here. I mentioned him to start round 13. You might also have Totola. He'll be very cheap at that stage. I've chucked him in as the mid-range sort of cheap guy. And that looks really good for round 13 and potentially round 19. We're well on our way already, but look at that. Round 16, we got nothing. Nothing at all. So we're going to need a lot of changes. So maybe this isn't a great strategy, but this is how you'd go about it if you're going to try and go with these guys. So you'd go Cheese. I would 100% have Cheese earlier so that you can have his cash rises as well as his cover. Another guy you can also have is Hopgood, as I mentioned. I've gone through a little bit of what I've already talked about with him playing these really important rounds. And potentially all 4 of these rounds, him getting bigger minutes than he usually would with all the other Eels guys injured or in Origin. If Madison is around, you'd probably just have Madison instead of Hopgood. But in this example, I'm assuming there's no Madison, and therefore Hopgood would be available to pick up. So inflated minutes for him is going to be good. He might go from 600 to 700k in that time. Would be incredibly valuable for you as a scorer, and well, mid-season money making is a lot harder than early season money making, and you would take that with 100k from a really high scoring guy. The third guy I would go for in this situation, there's not a lot of wriggle room. You could potentially go for somebody like Adam Elliott. Now, Barry Toohey has come out and said for the Knights reporting that Adam Elliott's targeting next week versus the Eels, but he's probably more likely to be after the bye. So the Knights bye is in round 10 after the round 9 Storm bye. So he'll be back in round 11. Now, he's been battling that, I think it's osteitis pubis, that niggling groin strain thing that he's been having. He's been out for about 2 months or so now, since round 1. And I think he's going to be really eased back in so that he doesn't end up doing it again. And he scored 29 in round 1 anyway, so his price is on the way down. After he's had, 3 matches, he's going to have round 11, 12, 13, and then 14 is their bye. So by round 15, he's probably on the way up again. So you'd buy him probably around either round 13 or round 15. And he would be your other round 16 option. He'll be another mid-range cash cow, sort of that 50-point borderline keeper, high mid-ranger option that will get you round 16 points. I like Adam Elliott quite a lot if you don't have too many Eels, Sea Eagles, or Knights players already, because they do all have that annoying round 14 bye. That's going to be a really tough one if we end up needing guys like Madison, Miller, and Crossland and things like that. It's going to be a little bit tough. Anyway, so that leaves us with a strategy that looks like this. That actually doesn't look too bad. We can see we've got our 3 for round 13. Round 14, we've got 2 extras. We've got Totola and Cheese. They can sit on our bench. Cheese can act as sort of hooker cover. That's fine. We've got a lot of mids in our team compared to most other positions. Having 2 on the interchange, that's fine. Round 15's kind of a little bit heavy. You've got 3 middles. That's kind of position-wise, it might be pushing it a little bit. You might be lacking a little bit in cover, say your centers or maybe your halves at that stage, because there's got no Adam Dewey at this stage, which is annoying because he was going to be a big part of my Origin plans originally, but obviously not now with that ACL rupture. So round 15, not ideal with the amount of people that we have in the mids, just pure mids essentially, but it's not too bad. Round 16, going to have 3. We'd probably sell Totola on his bye and upgrade to, well, he'll probably be at 600k at that time. You might be going to somebody like a Pappenhausen at that stage. I don't know when he's back. You might be going for a gun center. You might be going for Will Penasini. I don't know. It depends on price. It depends on what happens, but Totola is going to be a good sell, along with maybe Jackson Ford, those sort of types in round 16. So we've got our 3, and then we've got another instance of all 6 playing, but now that we've brought Hopgood in, as I've discussed before, we can play him in the edge position. That's going to be really nice, and especially for that round 19 bye, we can, if we've got an extra mid, we could play Hopgood in the edge when guys like Hosking, Katoa, and others are like that on the bye. But yeah, for now, Hopgood in the middle, in the edge here, and probably in the middle here. We'd sell Cheese at that point. He's not a final team option. You'd sell him off to another. You'd probably sell him plus one of your other options that has a buy in round 19 for a final team gun and a cash down. Maybe it's Peter Mamazelos, like I discussed in the hooker video. Maybe it just depends what happens and what's available at the time. So in this one, we've got DeBellin, Harris, and Hopgood. That's a strong middle for round 19. And then round 20 and onwards, we start looking at our final team, and you probably sell Elliott after this. And you probably get somebody like Isaiah Yeo in, because he's one of the 3 elite options that doesn't have a buy in the run home. Haas does, and Murray does in the head-to-head finals weeks, which is a little bit annoying. So Isaiah Yeo is probably going to be your first middle target after Origin, I would say. So that's one way to go about it. Let's not talk so much and go so much into detail, because there's a million ways you can go about it. Let's just dump another one together. So another way you could go about it is you buy Tohu Harris when he bottoms out in a week or 2. You've held on to Jackson Ford, and you really like Ryan Madison if he's non-Origin. So you can go with those 3, definitely. You're still holding Haas, and you've decided to bring in McInnes. You thought McInnes will go well, score you about 50 points, and he's managed to hold on to the lock spot with Rudolph out. So you're going to have all 6 of these in your team already in round 13. So these guys on the bye might hurt a little bit. Haas, Cheese, and McInnes. Depends if you can get 13 in round 13 in the other positions if you've got that many middles in round 13, but it's quite possible. Then round 14, you've got all of these really, really strong guys. You've got Madison on the round 14 bye. Round 15, you've got a lot of players. That is going to be tough because Hopgood in this scenario isn't that good. We've got Madison in our team instead, and that probably limits Hopgood's minutes. 3 interchange, or like 3 out of the 8 bench spots being middle forwards might stretch your depth. That might be a problem. But if that's the biggest problem in this thing, where we can genuinely come into the origin period with the 6 that we want to score throughout the entire period, that's a good trade-off. Round 16, we got Maddo, Cheese, McInnes. I like that. If McInnes had got good minutes, I would have jumped on him straight away. But yeah, as I said, I'm kind of whelmed with McInnes at the moment. He's just not too bad, not too good. And then round 17, you're normal. You've sold Jackson Ford. He's not a keeper. He's made you some good money by then. And you don't even need to buy another mid. You've got what you need. You've got 4, and then you've still got your 3 in round 19 before you probably move guys like Cheese and McInnes on. I think Toby Rudolph comes back from his pec about round 17. So you'd probably sell McInnes right after round 19 because he might be starting to lose just a little bit of money by then. Yeah, so final team target, you probably target Yo straight after. Things like that. So this is another really good way to prepare for it. These 6 guys, as you've probably noticed in the hooker video, Warriors are just brilliant in general. They've only got 1 bye throughout these 8 matches compared to everybody else having at least 2 other than the Dolphins. So Tohu Harris is a fantastic bye, probably even slightly better than Tarpanay, unless Tarpanay just starts going mental and putting out those 60+ massive origin period scores last year, but he just hasn't done it yet. And last one, let's go an example where we sold Haas. We decided he's too much money and we thought, he's got 2 reduced minutes games and isn't going to be playing too many games throughout the origin period anyway. I want somebody that's going to play more games. And maybe with those reduced minute games, we pick Haas up cheaper. Maybe he slides to 850k or even, dare we say, 800k with a couple of 35s or 40s backing up from origin in those 3-day turnarounds. We buy him a bit cheaper. So he might be your first final team target in round 20, round 21. Other than Yo, I'd still probably go Yo because he doesn't have that bye, but that's another strategy you can take. So in that case, Haas to Madison looks a pretty big slam dunk unless, as I've said, Madison's playing origin. Depends. And then you can really get a little bit more expensive. You can go for all 3 of Madison, Tarpanay, and Tohu Harris, but that starts eating into around 16 again, and then you'd need probably middle scoring guys like Cheese, Pangai Jr., McInnes, sort of those 50 average guys rather than those 55, 60 average guys. So if you sell Haas, you can potentially get away with a really light middle while still having pretty much equal to holding Haas, because Haas is going to be there most of the time, and use Haas's money in another position. If you can use Haas's money to potentially get to somebody like Isaiah Papali'i in round 14, you will have a really tough team to beat throughout the origin period and in the run home. Guys like that are going to be very, very difficult to bring in unless you've got a lot of coin. I think guys like Bateman, IPAP, maybe Pappenhausen, depending on how he goes. Nico Hines even, but I think Nico has to play Origin. So guys like that who are expensive and out of reach for Haas owners because that money is locked up in Haas, that can really help the tough positions, like especially the edge position with round 19 with guys like Eliezer Katoa and Hosking not playing in round 19. I think especially those Tigers guys could be an absolutely fantastic buy in round 14 with that extra money. So we've got Cheers and Pangai Jr. here as our round 16 option, plus Madison. Maddo is awesome. Maddo, Hopgood, whoever is the Eels middle in that period is going to be absolutely fantastic. And there we go. We've literally got a 5 instead of a 6 middle rotation. That frees us up for cash cows. That frees us up for other positions. That gives us a lot of flexibility that Haas owners will not have. You could have another middle. You might have You might have Mitch Dunn, pulling names out here. You might have Mitch Dunn or Wirram McGreig as a almost basement price cash out option that plays and scores you some points and gets you some money throughout that period. You might be able to really, really help that tough wing fullback position, which we'll talk about in the next little while. It's going to be very, very valuable what you can do with Haas's 800 to 900k. The only trade-off is literally that, trades. If you've saved, you can sell Haas and go crazy and make huge ranks. If you haven't saved, you probably need to go with a Haas holding strategy and make minimal trades as possible. So if you're coming into, say, what we're about to go into round 9, but if you've finished round 8, you're going into round 9 with almost max trades. Say you're down to like 23, 22 trades already, you might start to look to hold Haas strategy, that sort of strategy, compared to making 3, 4, 5, 6 trades that you definitely are going to lock in throughout that period, as well as everything else that goes wrong. So if you don't have heaps of trades coming into Origin, I would do the holding strategy and use as few trades as you possibly can. If you have a bunch, if you've still got like 27 trades, if you've got 28, 29 trades, you can absolutely dominate throughout this mid-season period, and you might start at like 2k and you might come out of it at top 500, who knows. I think it's going to really separate the planners from the non-planners this year. I think I'm going to be really nicely set up in my own team. We're going to have a look at that now. I'm going to show you probably what I'm going to do with my squad. So we've got, well, at the moment I've got Ford and Cheese there, but let's just show for now we've got Tarpanay back in there. So I've got Tarpanay Haas as my 2 guns. The next one I'm probably going to look to bring in is probably Tohu Harris. If he gets through 80 minutes this week, there's a very good chance he's on my buy list next week. If he doesn't, I might look to bring in Jack de Belin. If de Belin gets good minutes, I might even look to bring in somebody like Sipley. Probably not, but yeah, de Belin and Tohu Harris, probably the ones on my target list sooner rather than later. I think Cheese is going to be very valuable for me. My hooker strategy is probably going to be Robson, but I'm going to let him drop some more coin first. He'll be my round 16 and round 13 cover, so Cheese can be in my mids. I don't think I'm going to get McInnes. I think he's just not going to make enough if he's going to just spit out 50s. He'll be very useful, but I don't think it's going to be worth justifying the trade in and trade out at this stage for my setup. It depends if you got him in early or if you think he's going to do a bit better. I personally, either way, McInnes. So I'm very strongly looking at picking up Pangai Jr. when he bottoms out, because as I said, he's a roller coaster. He'll drop 28 on you 1 week and then he'll drop an 80 on you. If you pick him up at the lowest price, huge chance you'll be able to soar up in price and sell him a little bit later on. So that's what my plan is, probably just to monitor that. And if Pangai Jr. doesn't really work out, good chance I'll try and bring in somebody like Adam Elliott for round 13 rather than round 15. So that's probably my middle strategy at the moment. I'd really love it to be Hopgood, because then I could play Hopgood in edge and I wouldn't have to move guys like Bird and Lemuelu in the centres and buy more guys like Panasini, and then that moves Manu, and like it has a flow-on effect. So dual position players can be incredibly valuable, and the more dual position players you have that are actually good can really assist your trade and origin planning, because it just shows what you can do in your team. Because if, as I said, I wanted to buy middle, and that ended up affecting my wing fullback, because my middle can go to edge, and that means I don't need to move up my dual position centers. I don't need guys like Manu coming up here and needing more things like that. So it's really, really handy to know how your team sort of gels together for round 13, round 16, and what you can do, especially with a couple of duels like Bird and maybe Lemuelu. I'm really hoping to hold Lemuelu. I'm really, really hoping he holds that starting spot next week. Otherwise, it's going to be a sad trade out, and probably for Probably for like a Will Penasini, we'll see how it goes and what happens. Or a Manu, actually probably Manu. Yeah, that's it's a bit rambly. That's sort of where I'm at with my team, and it's almost certainly going to change. Somebody's going to get injured, somebody's going to get suspended, somebody's just going to stop scoring well. It's going to be different to what I expect, but if I'm close and I can minimize trades, I'm going to come home strong. I'm currently at 5,000, but I'm not really worried because I started at 1.5k this week and I've barely had any players play. I've avoided a few traps, which is nice. But as I said, if you can come into the origin period prepared to trade well or set up well so that you're going to get maximum scores or close to maximum scores, you could start origin at 2,000, you might come out top 500. It's genuinely going to separate the contenders from the guys who aren't planning very well. Okay, guys, that's the mids video. It's quite long, quite complicated. I would definitely just sort of think a little bit more about this list in your head and sort of how it works for your team, because a lot of these players are going to be almost musts, or like I'd say you almost must have one of Tarpanay, Harris, and Madison, probably two, and maybe in some circumstances you buy all three. It's just almost gonna be a non-negotiable unless you're spending all of your money in other positions to get huge scores there. I think you just have to pick a couple of these guys. It just depends what orientation that you have. If you have a couple of them already, great, go with that. If you don't, bring them in or move a different strategy. I've shown you three different ones, three completely different ones, and three different teams that all worked. So there's always going to be something that works unless you buy a lot of people with really poor cover like Fodawaker. So Fodawaker, I mentioned again, he's turned out really well, but for origin planning and cover, not so great. All right, guys, I will see you in the next video. Probably going to be talking a little bit about edges. Going to be a shorter one because Katoa, Preston, Hosking, those types of guys, we've all got already. We all know sort of what we're going to do. It's mainly going to be what are we going to do in round 13 and round 19. So guys like Frizzell, guys like Hudson Young, maybe even Bateman or Isaiah Papali'i for round 19. It's in the future. You've got to think about it and plan ahead.